I'm going to turn this over to my dear friend, Jimmie Dean Coffey. I've asked him to speak on the power of auction services in the real estate world. Specifically, how do you qualify a project? What properties work for auctions? What sellers are fit for an auction? I know Jimmie Dean's got some powerful information to share with us this morning, so I'm going to get out of your way after that little fiasco we just went through and turn it over to you. Thanks, Jimmie Dean.
You bet. No, Johnny, I'm really tickled you've invited me to be here and talk to Team United Country H5. As I said while you were away, you know, I was I'm always excited to talk to Johnny's bunch, and I've included Krista. I sent Krista Barlow a link to this, Johnny, and I told everybody while you were gone on your little nap. Krista's a new business consultant with United Country, and she'll be happy to tell you that I'm her father. I think. Anyway, she has heard so much about Johnny Horton and H5 and the team over there in Longview and scattered around all over East Texas. So I invited her to join this, and I see she made it on. She wasn't sure about her schedule, but I do. I'm proud to be invited. I am a little bit touched that I was asked to follow those two dynamic girls and the information, the content that they bring. They're always spot on, and Melissa and Nora did a great job as expected. You know, I don't want to take away from any of the content that I do have to bring to you, so let's just dive right in. We've got a couple of new initiatives and a new projects that we at Auction Services have brought on. I'm going to first of all show you a, let me drag it over here. Let me do some screen sharing. Let's go screen 2. We have a couple of flip books available. Can everybody see my screen? You should be able to.
Yes.
So what I'm showing you now is a flip book. And this book is very powerful. Anytime you want to show it to a would-be seller or a client that you might be working with, an attorney, this just kind of leverage your position in the auction business around the country. Not just in Longview, not just in East Texas, but shows you how, shows them, lets you show them how big of a company you're part of. You know, we have over 4,000 auctions annually. We'll sell over 6 billion in sales volume. It was much more than that the last year or two, up in the teens. I'd say there's close to that 4, 5, 6 billion sold in auctions each year. So the map there shows you the breadth and width of the company that you belong to and the team that you belong to. And as I don't remember if it was Melissa or Nora had mentioned, that you're not in this alone. You are part of we, and use the word we anytime you're making presentations. Anyway, this flip book is for your use. It's available on Bullseye. I don't want to go into it in great detail because I've got a lot of other information. Johnny asked me to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart that I've been really passionate about for 38 plus years. Got into real estate and auction business over 38 years ago, and I knew that I wanted to take real auctions into the real estate and category and be that a big part of what I do, and it has been. So I'm real passionate about it. So I could get real lengthy. I'm going to try to cut it down. So I'm going to speed through this flip book because it's available to you on Bullseye. The next thing I'm going to go to is a project that we've been working on at UCAS. When I say the word UCAS, that's United Country Auction Services, where Sean Terrell, myself, and Trina spend all of our time to build out tools, build out products, and build out information that you can build on to add into your toolbox in your local area. So this is a project, you're going to have availability of this at the convention. This is a poster that we have an initiative to get this poster posted in every one of United Country's offices so all the agents can look at it. And it is an auction guide 101, and it's a 10-step thinking process. It's a process to get you thinking about getting the steps in line for a real estate auction. And again, I'm going to kind of fly through this because I want to spend some time on the qualification part, which you're going to see is number 2 on this list. Number 1 being, do you meet the requirements to conduct an auction? Do you meet the requirements in Texas or wherever this project is? You may be working with a seller in Louisiana. You're close to that line over there. Do you know what the auction laws are in Louisiana? If you don't, Johnny can help you. I can help you. We have a membership with a company that has all the information on licensing nationwide for the auction license rules and laws. So diving right into step number 2 is, did you qualify the auction? Does that project or that candidate or that property, does it qualify for an auction? I'm not going to spend any time here on this because I'm going to go into great detail about that in a little bit. Step 3, you've got to determine what type of format, what kind of auction are we going to do? Is this going to be a reserve or an absolute auction? I can teach a whole class. I could do a 2-hour class on what is the difference between a reserve and an absolute auction. Something that you need to think about though. And Johnny's well aware of, Brooks is well aware of, many of the others on your team are aware of what a reserve or an absolute auction. There's only 2 types of auction. That's a reserve or an absolute. Are you going to do it as a live auction? Are you going to do it as a sealed bid or a simulcast or a phone bid or an online only? Many different types of auctions that we can do. Nora hit on one while ago that we're going to talk a lot about at convention, and that's a virtual auction. This is a virtual auction is something that kind of was presented a few years ago in the early onset of online auctions, but then it was gotten away from. Well, now it's coming back hard. And this is where the auctioneer, you or me as the auctioneer, will be in front of a camera, just like we are here. Our item or our real estate or our equipment will be projected through an image, and all the bidding will take place via the internet, but in live time. So the auctioneer will be talking into the screen. He'll be introducing the item. We've got 50 acres here, folks, and it's a great 50-acre parcel. And what do you want to give for it? We've got an opening bid of 20,000. 20,000, we're going to get 30. 30,000. I see I've got a bid at 30,000. Who'll get 40? I'm at 30 to get 40. So they'll be doing that live time via projection, just like we are here. And that's called a virtual auction. Again, there's Johnny's asked me to teach a master's or maybe even a doctorate class on real estate auction in a 1-hour period. And then he got lost there for about 15 minutes. Kind of cutting into my time, but there's a lot of knowledge behind and information that we could give anytime you need it about the auction formats that I mentioned there. The next step, step 4, is to collaborate with the marketing team. You have the power of, I'm going to say, one of, if not the top real estate and auction marketing teams. That's a real estate and auction marketing company with a team at your fingertips. It's called EMS. EMS stands for Enhanced Marketing Solutions. And EMS is a United Country company within your company, United Country. So you're going to want to collaborate with them early on. After you get through step 2 and 3, collaborate with EMS so many times over the past few years. The novice or maybe even the intermediate auctioneers, they'll get the cart way on out in front of the horse, and they should have got EMS involved earlier, because it takes time to build out that marketing budget and that collateral. Next, step 5, we're going to have the auction date. Got to set that auction date. Do we have enough time? I've been battling back and forth for the last year, but with the contract for the last 4 weeks with an attorney on a project that we're working on. And I just had to change the auction date again because that attorney has drug the time out. You know, you're going to need a window of marketing exposure for your project. So think about the auction date, think about getting ready for the auction, and think about how much time needs to be allocated for that marketing period. Is it 3 weeks? Is it 4 weeks? Is it 5 weeks? And don't get yourself backed in a corner. Too many times I have to fix those dates because somebody drug their feet for a couple weeks. And as Johnny can tell you, time goes fast when we're trying to get these things set up. Then after we get that date set, we've got to get all the documents prepared. Videos, descriptions, information packets. You'll hear them called PIPs a lot of time. That's PIP, property information packets, or bidder information packets. Some different names there. All that documentation has to be prepared after we've gathered the data. Next, we've got to secure an online event or the live auction event. Are we going to do it on a bidding portal? Is it going to be on HiBid? Are we going to be using some other auction time, or what is that portal that we're going to use? Are we going to do a live event? If it's going to be a live auction event, or we're going to have to probably put some thought and reserve a space. Can we get a space reserved if that's a live event? Next, that auction's going to go live. And when I say the auction event is live, that don't necessarily mean we're standing there doing it. That might be the online bidding portal is live and hot, or it might mean we've scheduled it. Now we've got all the marketing out there, and we're going to have to get our live event prepared and get our vendors and our team aligned. Next, we have auction day. Does auction day mean the day of the live event that we're all going to show up at that ballroom in our sport coat and with our team? Or is the auction day the last day of bidding for that online event? Or is it the day of that virtual auction event? Or is it the day or date that all of those sealed bids have to be turned in? 10th, step 10, last step, is post-closing details. So after the close of the auction, we've got to, there's a whole plethora of stuff that has to happen there, from the signing of all contracts to ordering the final title commitment, to then going to the closing the transaction. And then I like to say a deal never has an end date, because we're going to stay in communication. You need to stay in communication with the buyer and the sellers from now until Jesus comes back, because you don't know where that next auction is going to come from. Anyway, so that is the 10-step process, Auctions 101. And that there's a lot of redundancy, or not redundancy, a lot of stuff there that the auction folks in the room know and understand, but it's still a good list of events to think about. Johnny, do you have anything to say or any thoughts about the auction guide and the 101 process there?
No, I mean, I think that's phenomenal, and it gives people, I think a lot of people think auctioneers are kind of like pastors. They just show up on Sunday and preach a sermon, and that's not the case. There's a lot of work that goes into putting an auction together and getting all the legwork done, and I appreciate you sharing that with us.
You bet. And I can promise everyone on this page, on this in this class, that showing up and preaching the sermon is about 3% of the whole deal. There's a whole lot more goes into it than that. Now I'm going to go in. I told you I was going to spend some time on, does the project or the property qualify for an auction? I've got a PowerPoint ready for that, and I'm going to share that with you in hopes that that'll work. You can see that page, can't you, team?
You got it.
All right. Let's get past this. Nothing of real relevance there, but some things that I want you to think about as I walk through these are the considerations for a real estate auction. Is a real estate auction, when we're talking about a property that could possibly go to auction, are we thinking about the property type? Are we thinking about the property condition? Are we talking about the location of the property? Are we thinking about the area of where that property is held? That kind of goes with location. What about market conditions? Are we thinking about that? Is that what the driving factor is? Is it the seller? Or is it the situation? What's the most important on this list of considerations when trying to decide whether or not this project is an auction candidate? Anybody in the table there take a jab at that, Johnny?
They've all got a perplexed look on their
The
face.
seller or the situation, I don't know.
Amy says seller and situation.
Situation.
The rest of them are just shaking their head.
Yeah, well,
I think it's,
go ahead.
well, I think it's gonna be your seller to see how comfortable they are with an auction, because most of them are scared that they're gonna lose their butt on it.
Okay. I feel your answer, and you're somewhat right. We're going to go into it a little deeper. And I think Amy's pretty correct in the seller and the situation. All of it goes into effect when you're qualifying the project. The seller and the situation, I'm going to probably raise to the top of that list, and situation probably more so. Okay. Here's one other thing. And guys, some of these answers that I've come up with are things that have popped up multiple times when dealing with realtors or real estate agents or real estate brokers in thinking about an auction. And I'm always at awe in some of the answers that real estate professionals, the answers they don't have when they call me and say, hey, can we take this to auction? Can you put this on auction? That's their question. Can you put this on auction? Well, yeah, I can put it on auction. That's not what I'm after. This is a question that they seldom know the answer to. is the client that they're working with the legal owner of record, or do they have the legal rights to sell that property? If you're working with a real estate seller or a real estate client, if somebody calls you and says, hey, I got a property to sell, your first duty, your number one duty, first step is to find out who is the legal owner of title to that project. I've got a newscast that I'm going to share with Johnny after I get off here. One of our agents out here in Arizona was on a news channel on Friday. This is becoming really scary, and real estate agents have fallen victim to it multiple times already, but they're getting calls from non-owner people who are going into contracts, even going to the point of changing deeds fraudulently. This agent or broker actually got one under contract, and it was caught at title. The title company caught it that the people that they were dealing with was not the actual seller. So I really want to push toward an education opportunity here for you guys. Find out who the owner is. Make sure that's who you're talking to about that property. Are they the legal owner? Are they the power of attorney? Can they provide that power of attorney document? Are they the personal representative? Can they provide the personal representative documents? Are they the trustee for a trust? Can they provide the trustee documents that have been recorded? Are they an LLC member, or are they a corporation member or director? Every time you need to get the legal documentation in your file, in your hand, that proves any of these points, because it can and it will come back to bite you. Have those documents in your file. The next question I'm going to ask is, what's my seller's why? Again, this is an answer that is seldom gathered by real estate professionals. What is the seller's why? The why means more to me than the property, the location, the market, any of that, when I'm considering whether or not a property is a real estate auction candidate. Here's two definitions that you need to learn, I guess. Definitions or two quotes. Is your seller a goal-driven seller, or is your seller a price-driven?
Okay, sweetheart, I'll still be on here on the phone.
Jonathan,
did
mute
I-
yourself, please.
Johnny, did I ever share this goal-driven and price-driven model to you?
No.
You're going to be mad at me at the end of this.
Okay. Okay. I was mad at you when you started, so that's okay.
Oh, good. Didn't have to wait till the end. Goal-driven versus price-driven. I'm going to tell you right now, if your seller is anywhere close to this price-driven box, and you have to check this price-driven box, there is a strong possibility that this is not an auction prospect. I get call after call after call of people saying, hey, I want to take this to auction. I'm talking about in my community, in my marketplaces, and within United Country Team nationwide. I've got a property I think it's a good auction. This property is right at the corner of walk and don't walk, and it's right at the corner where everybody wants to be, and my seller wants to sell it. Well, why does your seller want to sell it? Well, they just think that maybe we can get them some money for it. Well, what's some money? Well, it's worth $100,000. Okay. What will they take for it? Well, they want 100,000, or they Anything above 100, they'll take. Okay, so they're a price-driven seller. They're not a goal-driven seller. I'm going to move on from that. Keep goal-driven and price-driven in your mind, because I'm going to bring you back to an image here in a minute that's going to make that more resonant. I want you to think about, when you're trying to decide whether or not they're goal-driven or price-driven, our 3 best sellers for real estate properties, any property, any asset type for that matter. This was given to me in 1983 and probably every year since, and I pass it on now because it's still relevant. Our top 3 sellers come from the 3 Ds. I'm sure Johnny, I'm sure several of you on the team that's been around auctions have heard of the 3 Ds. I'll just go into them. Death, debt, divorce. What do all 3 of the Ds point toward? Anybody?
Stress, trouble.
Drama.
Drama. But
Huge loss of income.
more importantly, look right back at the very top of the screen.
Driven.
Goal driven. Right? That's where it points to. Goal driven sellers are what we are more looking for auction specific qualified projects. Okay, always remember that. This next image is going to prove that and explain that. I don't know the exact stats, but Johnny, can you see my cursor when I do that?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure, since this is an image of a PowerPoint, I wasn't sure if you could see my cursor over it or not. I'm not sure if it's 70% or if it's 68% or if it's 75%, but it's going to fall somewhere in that percentage range of buyers are going to fall within the price-driven model, price-driven sellers. That's the area that most real estate sellers land. That's the area that most real estate agents, real estate brokers make their living. That's where the traditional listings, the traditional transactions, the negotiated deals, that's where they live. Because on the lower 30%, we're going to call them market testers. Anybody in the room ever had an overpriced turkey? We call them OPTs. Huh? So this is where the OPTs live, and the market testers. Yeah, I'll let you list my property. Yeah, you price that dude at 200,000. We know it will never bring more than 125, but we take it as a listing because why? That's what we want. We want listings in the real estate world, right? That's where the overpriced turkeys, market testers. So the genuine sellers are going to land in this middle range from somewhere close to 30% to somewhere close to 70%. This is where the typical realtor lives, and this is where their listing sales happen. Okay. Now, you get up and over that 70% range, there is a percentage between 20 and 30% of the sellers. They are what we call goal driven. They are putting their property on the market for a specific goal. They may be somewhat price driven, and that's the ones down here closer to the 70, to hey, we've got to get this thing gone in 30 days because they're going to foreclose on it. I've got a story I could tell about one that we booked just this past week that was in this position right here. She accepted an offer on the real estate too early because she was so goal driven. She was scared that the lender was going to foreclose on the property any day. Couldn't get that real estate booked, but we're having to deal with a bunch of personal property on that state. So anytime they land in this goal-driven section is when I say that's the position of truth. They will be strongly considered as a to fall into the time-defined real estate sale by competitive bid. What did I just define? Time-defined sale by competitive bid.
I think you defined alternative sales methods.
And auction.
Oh, yeah, right.
It can
Good
be
job, Jimmie.
internet auction. It can be a sealed bid auction. It can be any of those that we talked about before. It can be our Jumpstart program where we do an online auction without even telling the seller in the early stages that it's called an auction. That's a whole nother class for another day. But I want you to understand goal-driven versus price-driven. Okay? Everybody clear on this page? Does it
Yes,
make
sir.
sense?
Makes lots of sense.
All right. Again, I get too many real estate agents and brokers that bring listings to me down in this area, down in this 10, 20, 30, 40% area. They're not good real estate auction candidates. So if that's where your listing lives, no right off, you probably don't have an auction. Okay. The seller's connection to the property. Does the seller have emotional ties to the property? If they've got really strong ties to the property emotionally, sometimes that becomes a tough auction prospect. Now, going back to that goal driven, if their goal is strong enough, we can get past this emotional connection. I had to do it with my father's estate. I had to do it with my father-in-law's estate. The goals will overcome and take power over the emotional status of the project more times than not. Is your seller a realistic seller? Are they realistic to the price, the condition, the market, etc.? Is it a commercial property? Keep in mind, commercial properties more times than not are financially controlled, not so much emotionally controlled. Sometimes you get that commercial or that business where mom or pop built it over the period of years and they just don't want to realize that nobody needs to buy a wall-mounted telephone anymore. And if that's the case, they may not. That may not be an auction, but most of the time, commercial and businesses are totally financial in nature. Here's another biggie. Has that property been listed before? Anybody in the room like to eat stale bread? I don't. So I call these listings, are they fresh or are they stale? If they're fresh, they're going to have a stronger check mark. They're going to be weighted a lot more heavily toward the auction process and an auction candidate, an auction qualification. Stale properties that's been on the market 6-8 months, the market's already seen them. Stale properties that's been on the market for 2 or 3 years, all the market has seen it. So you need to have a good reason to bring that to auction, and you need to have a good story to market it by before it's a good auction candidate. What type of property? Farm and ranch land. I can tell you straight across the board, if it's a farm or ranch land, the property type will check the box as an auction candidate. Development land. This will depend a little bit on the market, the economy at the time. Back in the early O's, late 90s, development land was strong auction candidates. We went through a period of time in the mid O's, 07, 08, 09, that I had lenders calling me almost 2, 3, 4 times a week. Hey, I've got a development. I'd like to know if you can take to auction. I can take it to auction. I just won't be able to find a buyer. And that's the way it was back then. Because, and a lot of that was because the lenders had shut down all financing. There wasn't any money available for those developments. Recreational hunting land. Recreational and hunting land can be a good, strong buyer, good, strong candidate. Again, that depends on economy. What's your economy like? Is the economy flush with cash? If the economy is bad, like it was for several years there in the late O's, recreational wasn't so great because recreational and hunting land is bought with residual or secondary money or leftover money out of a buyer's wherewithal. So if they've got plenty of cash, it can be good auction properties. Residential country home. This can be a good buyer depending on the market, but it's typically these are going to be a retail or an owner occupant. So you got to think about that. I can go into a class on each one of these topics. Residential in town or subdivision. This is very strong likelihood that this is going to be a retail or an owner occupant. Is that buyer pool going to be a good buyer at an auction? Are they going to have to get 97% financing? If so, they're not going to be a good auction buyer. Is it going to be a higher end residential home where the buyers will have wherewithal to be a bidder? You've got to think through all of these scenarios before you can qualify a property. Residential income producing properties, rental properties. These are typically pretty good auction candidates if you're in a good rental income producing area. These investors know how to buy at auction and they will buy at auction. Residential flippers, properties in need of love. These are wholesale buyers. Again, these are buyers that are typically well versed in the market. They have the wherewithal or the ability to go get the money, and they are typically good buyers at auction. One of the cool things about a flipper is if you have 10 buyer possibilities, if you've got 10 buyers in the room on one flipper property, each one of those 10 buyers will have a different direction that they're going to go with that project. They're going to have a different opinion to what it takes to cure or what it takes to put that property back into the retail market. And each one of those 10 processes will have a different price point or cost to cure is what we call it in the industry. Therefore, they'll have a different number that they can give for it on the wholesale end. Commercial property, again, they're financially driven. Uniqueness of the property. Is the property extremely unique? That can be a good thing or a bad thing. Okay. Is it unique in a positive way? Will that have a heavy demand on the interest? You take a property that's not going to have any availability and hadn't been on the market for years, great auction. We sold a couple of years ago. There's a little town just east of Bloomington called Nashville, Indiana. Nashville is a tourist-driven community, and very seldom is there a commercial property come available in that town. Well, the largest portfolio holder in that town for many, many years, several decades, had been a gentleman who had bought and saved and built a portfolio of properties in that town. Well, his estate, he passed, his estate come available, the kids couldn't get along. Now all of a sudden they had about, I don't know, probably it was somewhere around 20 properties in that area that we were going to make available. Up to this point, there was maybe one property come available every year, maybe one every couple of years. There was pimped up demand. There was buyers available for these unique properties in this very dynamic little town that has a lot of interest. We had the news media was there before the auction. The news media, we had several channels set up at the auction. We had more people than the room would allow. This created a lot of demand. It created a sense of urgency. None of us could put a price on any of these properties because we didn't know what the price or what the value would be. Is that property in a, in a negative way? If it's unique in a negative way, maybe this is a spot for a sealed bid auction. Total class around sealed bid auction, but a sealed bid auction does not expose your final bid to the world, and therefore maybe is a safe way for that property that's in a kind of a negative or a weird way of uniqueness. Let's talk about true market value a little bit, because this is going to become important for you to know when qualifying a property. TMV, not the same as TME, but TMV, true market value. What is the true market value? We in the auction industry use the word buyer's premium a lot of times. Most of you know what that is. If you don't, we can explain that later, but the buyer's premium is a percentage of money that goes on top of the final bid. Well, I want you to understand that true market value is the final bid plus that buyer's premium, okay? So say your final bid's 100,000 and the buyer's premium is 10%, your true market value, in your opinion, this is the broker or the agent or the auctioneer, is going to be in that 110,000 range, okay? So is your seller, what's their expectations? Are they savvy to what the true market value, not just the final bid, okay? We got to look at the big picture, because in the buyer's world, even though a lot of times they don't think about while they're bidding this 10,000, it's on their mind. We haven't hidden it from them. And at the end of the day, this is the check they're going to write. So we think about it all as the true market value. What's their expectation? Here is, you need to prepare your estimate of true market value. You need to find out, and this is a number, again, that realtors fall short on almost all the time. What's your seller expecting? Where are they in relation to what the property is really worth? Are they realistic? You got to have that conversation with them. Your job is, as an agent, as a broker, your job is to consult that seller into realistic terms. Don't just be yep, okay, you want to price it at 250? All right, that's what we'll do. You need to talk through that. So is the seller realistic? If the seller is not realistic, if you think this number here on TMV is 200 and your seller says 200 to 205, I'm going to check this not realistic box, because they're probably not going to be an auction candidate, or a strong one anyway. If the seller's expectations are down in that 75 to 80, 85% range of the TMV, Now we're talking to a good, strong auction candidate. Okay, what's the local market like? Guys, I know we've run over just a little bit, but please bear with me if
No, you're good. You're good.
are we okay, Johnny? All right.
Yes, sir.
Current market conditions. What's the current market conditions in your local market? If you've got a project that you suspect will have one or less buyers, probably not a good auction unless the goal is high enough. And if we have time, I'll tell you about a situation there and remind me, Johnny, about that. Because I sold one a couple of years ago that I wondered if we would even have one buyer. I really did. I wondered if we would have one buyer, but the ultimate goal was high enough that they were willing to take a stab at it, and I was willing to put my work to use for them. Do we think we've got 1 to 5 buyers, 5 to 10 buyers? The more buyers you feel might be interested in that property in the current conditions, the stronger it'll be. So does anyone remember a time period recently that we were going into above asking price, highest and best sale conditions recently? What did we have? We had 5 to 10 or more buyers on any given property on any given day. Is that accurate?
Yes.
We saw it. What kind of buyers did we have? What kind of market was we in? We were in a strong auction candidate market. When you reach out to a group of buyers and say, you've got until Friday to submit your highest and best price, you have just asked for a sealed bid auction. I don't care what you call it, but that's a sealed bid auction. Next question I have, do you have competing properties that are similar? How many are available? If there's 0 properties available, okay, let's back up again 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 10 months ago. The reason we had 9, 10, 5, 8 buyers available is because we didn't have any supply, correct? It's all intertwined. So now all of a sudden we don't have any buyers, 1 or less, strong auction candidate, right? 1 to 5 properties, not so much of a strong candidate. 5 to 10 properties like this one, not a good candidate. We're not going to get 100% value or more. We're going to get value. It's just not the perceived value. All right. If we've got 10 properties on the market, very similar to ours, and they're all priced between 100 and 125,000, guess what they're not worth? They're not worth 100,000. They're going to fall somewhere short because they're available for 100,000, right? Did any of that make sense, Johnny?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to open up here in a little while for some Q&A, but I'm hoping this is making of relevance for you. So overall analysis, after we've asked ourselves all of those questions, we have to come up with the answer to all those questions. Based on all of that, does the property, is it a strong candidate, possibly a candidate, or not likely? If I check that not likely, now I understand some of those questions are somewhat, iffy, that you're going to have to think about, and they don't have a black and white answer. They're subjective, but hopefully they'll make you think about hard enough that you can check mark one of these boxes. Okay. What's the final takeaway from this? I'll tell you. Qualify the entire project. So many people come to me and say, Jimmie Dean, I've got a property at, I said it earlier, corner of walk and don't walk. Would that property sell at auction? Yes, it would. But do you know anything about the rest of the project? So we're going to qualify the entire project. Now, I've got another, Johnny, can I have just a few more minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay. I know I'm stepping in on your time, but I hope this is valuable. I've got a tool that's not available for you all to use, but I want to show you a tool that I'm working on. And as soon as I get it fully baked, I'm going to make it available on Bullseye. This is a 10-question qualification tool for an auction project. Okay. Again, subjective, right? We're going to answer 10 questions about the project, right? The project. Notice I've used the word project here everywhere. It's about the project. We're going to score it 1 to 25. This is part of what's not baked yet. I may have 1 to 25, maybe too many numbers, maybe too big a range. The other part of it that I'm trying to figure out is I think a couple of these questions have a little more weight, they're a little more weighted than some of the rest. But I'm going to ask you some questions. I don't care. Somebody answer there at the table, Johnny. I don't want to get in trouble with everybody and their mute buttons, but so I've got an estate. John comes to town. He's the only child, and his mother has passed away. His father passed away 10 years ago. They have a 25-acre little mini farm that has a lot of household goods and 2 outbuildings. And John comes into town, and he lives in Seattle, but the property is in Longview, and they buried Mom last week, and he's got to get back to Seattle, where he's highly involved in the IT development company out there. Is this a goal-driven seller or a price-driven seller? 1 to 25.
Goal driven.
That'd be
25.
25.
I'll help you. What the seller has told us is, I've got to get back to Seattle. The corporation that I work for and that I'm a CFO of needs me back there, and I need this project taken care of. Mom does not owe anything on the property. I just need it sold. I don't want to go absolute, but you get me what the property's worth, and we're going to sell it. Actual value versus seller's expectations, 1 to 25. Okay. Maybe a 20 or a 25, but okay.
pretty high.
It's going to be real high, isn't it, Johnny?
Yes.
Is the property in a good leverage position? What did I tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah. 0 debt.
Mom owes nothing on it. Okay. Can the seller legally sell the property? Okay, so this is a yes or no most of the time, but sometimes I will have, and I may need to change this word instead of seller to client or my prospect, because sometimes a prospect comes to me and says, hey, Mom needs to sell this. Well, then I get to diving in and I find out Mom needs to sell it. You're not the personal representative yet. It's got to go through probate. We've got 8 months before this thing will be in anybody's name that can sell it. What we know from this guy is he does have legal rights to sell it. He is the personal rep because he was one family member, only child. Are the sellers in full alignment? This is a no-brainer kind of auction, okay? Is the seller willing and able to provide marketing money? I think so. Is it a high demand property? What's a little country home on 25 acres in Longview? What's the demand for a property like that out there?
High.
Low supply for the property. How many are there? A lot of properties on the market out there like that?
No.
So is this going to be a low or a high supply? I mean, if it's really low, give me a number. 25 being no properties on the market to 1 if there's 50 properties on the market.
2018.
What?
Yeah, that's fair.
Has the property been on the market before? Don't sound like it from our conversation, right? Property type. So of these property types right here, where would we let this fall? In my opinion, it's going to fall
Number
right
2.
in this. I'm sorry.
I'd put it in number 2.
I do too, Johnny, because mom's lived there. Mom and dad have lived there for years and years. It's probably going to be a little bit of a fixer upper. It's probably not in, it might be in move-in condition, but it might not be in 2023 updated fashion like the market might want it to be. So that's going to be a somewhere between a 10 and a 25 on our scoring metrics. Let's call it a 20. Now we're going to have a score of 198, and that's the score of all of our metrics, 1 to 10 items to 198. That's going to fall in this class B category. Again, guys, don't take this tool being black and white because I don't have it fully baked yet. Let's go up here. Do what?
I said, that's awesome. That's a cool
Yeah,
thing.
I was just sitting here thinking, as we were going through this, Amy and I went through this very scenario last week with a guy. His mother had passed away. He's got the property at least cleaned out, cleaned up, and ready to sell, but he needs it gone. He doesn't want to spend any money on it. I'd love to go through those numbers on him, because in our opinion, it is a good auction prospect, even though it is a house in town, but it will be an investment property.
Right. So this in my goal, in my hopes, this tool will work on any property, any project, any place, any time. You just have to score each one of them accordingly. And I don't know if the metrics are all correct yet. That's why I don't have it live, and you're the first group that I've even introduced it to. I've introduced it to a couple individuals and getting some ideas. But this will be a tool, Johnny, that you and Amy will sit down, or you and a team member, or you and Farrell, or whoever sits down, and you go through the process after you've got the information. You've had your initial contact or your initial conversation with your seller. These are all 10 questions that I answer every time, second nature. I'm getting the answer to these. I'm just trying to figure out a way to put it on paper to where it's a little more easy for anyone to go through. Let's go through another one. John and Betty calls us, and they've got a home in town, in a subdivision, mostly first-time home owners, startup homeowners, a lot of youth, a lot of young working couples in there. And John and Betty call us and say, hey, if you can get our property sold for us, we owe $250,000 on it, and we know it ought to be worth somewhere around 260 to 275. But we've got 3 kids. We got our 3rd kid on the way, and this is a 3-bedroom house, and we'd really like to move to a new neighborhood and get a 4-bedroom home. If you find us a buyer, would we be willing to sell? Goal driven or price driven?
Price.
Price driven, big time. So where are they going to land? Guys, I'm gonna land them somewhere down in the 2 range. They may be a little higher than that, but they're going to be a price driven seller. I know that couple. Actual value versus seller's expectations. What did they already tell us?
Yeah, they gave you
Get
the
us
value.
get us enough money and we'll sell. We already know that they owe, and we'll get to that question next, but we know that they owe just under what the property has is worth. So I'm going to say that their expectations of value, true market value, remember the TMV, their expectations are going to be in that 90 to 95, maybe 97% range. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
So heck, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's give them a 3 score. No, let's just give them a 5 score. And this seller, guys, this seller, I get phone calls on from agents and brokers around the country regular with this seller. Okay. So what did we figure out a while ago? Where are they at in this with this answer?
On number 3.
Number 3, at least. If you
They're
had a 3
number
plus.
3 big time, right? What give me a number, Johnny?
Let's give them another 5.
Okay. Can the seller legally sell the property? I think we're okay with that. They own the property, right? Are all of the sellers in 100% alignment?
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Huh?
Sounds like it.
Is the property seller willing and able to provide marketing money?
That would be my question.
I'm gonna say we're gonna have to ask those questions to get this answer. But let's say that for the use in this illustration, let's say they don't. And I'm gonna say that there's a strong possibility they won't, because they owe dang near what the property's worth, right?
Yeah.
So their bank account's probably gonna be a little bit skinny. So we're gonna put them as a, I don't know, let's give them a 10. Because actually we can probably give them a less. Let's give them a 5, because that seller is not accustomed to paying for marketing money. That seller customarily lists a property with a real estate agent to list it for 3 months and put it on the market, and it don't cost anything out of their pocket. They're not expected to do anything other than be gone when it's being showed, right? Now, is the property in is it a high demand property?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. High demand property. What number you want me to put there?
20.
Got it. What about supply?
I would imagine there's other supply if it's a newer development.
Okay. 10, 15, 12, I don't know.
Yeah, 10.
Has the property been on the market? We don't know the answer to that. Let's say it has been on the market with another realtor, too high for 30 days. So we're gonna put that down in the 10 range. Okay. They're reducing the property each time they talk to a realtor, right? Until that, well, until they can't. Property type, residential, first or second time home buyer, it's 1 to 10. This is probably going to be about a number 1 or number 2 on our scoring system. Where'd that come in at? 104. That's going to be a weak auction candidate. The only reason that it's higher is a high demand property. If it wasn't a high demand property, and we probably missed that number a little bit because we've said that there was some supply. If there's some supply, this demand is going to come down. Right? That would move it down into the 94 category. And then that's going to be our big red heck no. Okay. Did that help explain qualifying a project?
Absolutely.
All right. Guys, I want to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to leave it to questions. And this is going to be oh so quick. But is anyone here aware of a thing that we've got access to called Bullseye?
Heard of it.
In Bullseye, I want you to be aware of a tab called Auction Services. I want you to be aware of another tab called the Auction Blue Book. This Auction Blue Book is a book that has all the resources for you from start to finish. And if you come across a situation you don't have the answer for, call me. If we've missed something in this blue book, Sean, Trina, and I worked diligently for a couple of years to put this together. It's been available for a couple of years, but there's everything from the introduction to auction to the auction process and multiple steps thereof, adding auctions to your company, listing strategies, marketing, formats, and logistics, auction closings. Folks, this blue book right here is a very powerful tool for you to study that will educate you even more about the auction method of marketing. I am always available for your at your beck and call, usually anyway, and would be happy to help you in any situation. But know also that at 10 o'clock at night, if you're sitting there thinking about a project you're working on, click over there and go to the blue book, and I think there's going to be information in there that'd be of good help. Let me open it up, question and answers, folks. I've ran you way past when I was supposed to be here, 27 after the hour.
You started a little late.
We got started just a little bit late, but I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to allow you any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
There are none.
None.
I don't have any questions, but I think this was great because I've often wondered how to qualify a project, which ones would work, because we do have farmers and different people that are always interested in auctions, and man, this was very beneficial. I enjoyed it.
Well, I hope so. And if there's anything I can do, please reach out to me. Johnny's got my contact information.
Could you send me those slides that you used for your presentation?
I can
Appreciate that.
and will.
Appreciate that.
Then Johnny, on another time, I want to sit down with you and pick your doctorate mind about my tool there and try to come up with some better metrics that make that work.
I was fixing to send you a text.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to dig into that more, so. Any questions?
Unfortunately, this
Anybody?
business is never an exact science. I don't care if you're appraising real estate. I don't care if you're qualifying a real estate auction project or if you're qualifying any part of the real estate. It's not an exact science, and it never will be. And it goes back to the same old adage that we learned in Real Estate 101: location, location, location. Every property's different. Every seller's different. They all have their own DNA. We have to treat them as such.